The Great Hall of the Galactic Assembly was the largest building ever made by any species. It floated in the empty space between three star systems, built from metals that shined like liquid silver. Inside, thousands of seats rose up in circles, one above another, like steps climbing toward the dark ceiling, filled with artificial stars. Park Tae-ho stood at the center of this massive room. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He wore the simple blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic service. Around him, in every direction, sat the representatives of 850 alien species. Some had scales. Some had feathers. Some looked like walking trees. Some had no bodies at all and existed only as lights floating in special containers. Today, they would vote on Earth's future. Tae-ho had known this day was coming. For the past 10 years, he had watched the mood in the assembly change. When humans first joined the coalition 60 years ago, everyone was curious about them. Humans were strange creatures. They lived short lives but worked with desperate energy. They laughed and cried easily. They formed deep friendships with species completely different from themselves. But over time, curiosity turned to worry. Worry turned to fear. The Speaker of the Assembly was a creature called High Minister Vaughn. He belonged to a species that looked like tall, thin birds with 4 arms. His feathers were deep purple, a sign of his old age and high rank. He stood at his platform above Tae-ho and looked down with eyes that showed no warmth. "The matter before us today is simple," Vaughn said. His voice was translated instantly into every language through small devices each representative wore. The species known as humans have been members of this coalition for 60 standard years. In that time, they have grown in number and influence far beyond what anyone expected. They have spread to 47 worlds. They have built ships faster than any we have seen. They have developed weapons that make even the oldest species nervous. Tae-ho wanted to speak, but it was not his turn. He had to wait and listen. "More concerning," Vaughn continued, "is their history. Before joining us, humans spent thousands of years fighting each other. They created weapons capable of destroying their own world. They nearly killed their home planet through pollution and war. Even now, they argue among themselves constantly. They are unstable. They are dangerous." A sound of agreement rose from many sections of the assembly. Tae-ho kept his face calm, but inside, his heart was beating fast. "The proposal before us is this," Vaughn said. "Earth and all human colonies will be removed from the Galactic Coalition. Humans will have 30 standard cycles to withdraw from Coalition space. After that time, any human ship found in our territory will be considered hostile." Tae-ho finally had his chance to speak. He stepped forward and looked up at the thousands of faces watching him. "High Minister," he said, keeping his voice steady, "I ask the Assembly to consider what they are doing. Yes, humans have a violent history. We do not hide this. But we have also changed. We have learned. In 60 years as coalition members, we have never started a war. We have never attacked another species. We have only defended ourselves when attacked first. And you defended yourselves very well," someone called out from the upper seats. "Too well. You destroyed an entire fleet of the Mordek Empire in a single battle." "The Mordek attacked our colony without warning," Tae-ho replied. "They killed 50,000 civilians, including children. Were we supposed to do nothing?" "You were supposed to call for coalition assistance," Vaughn said coldly. "Instead, you handled it yourselves. You showed the galaxy exactly how dangerous you can be." Tae-ho took a deep breath. "We called for help. We waited 3 days. No help came. By then, more of our people were dying. We had no choice." "There is always a choice," Vaughn said, "and humans always choose violence." The representatives from several species began talking loudly. Some agreed with Vaughn. Others seemed less certain. But Tae-ho could see which way the wind was blowing. The fear of humanity had grown too strong. A representative from a species that looked like large gray stones rose to speak. His name was Elder Koss, and his people were among the oldest in the coalition. "I have watched humans for many years. Koss said in his slow, heavy voice. They are not evil. But they are young. Perhaps too young to be trusted with the power they have gained. Perhaps they need more time to grow. Away from us. Away from us. Another representative repeated. Yes. Let them grow somewhere else. Let them prove themselves over another 1,000 years. Then maybe they can return. Tae-ho felt a cold weight in his stomach. He understood now. This was not about justice or fairness. This was about fear. The other species were afraid of what humans might become. They wanted to push humanity away before humans grew even stronger. May I ask one question? Tae-ho said. Vaughn waved one of his forearms. Speak. If this vote passes, what happens to the human engineers working on coalition projects? What happens to the human doctors in coalition hospitals? What happens to the human scientists helping to develop new technologies? Vaughn's feathers ruffled slightly. They will leave with the rest of your kind. Of course. And their work? The projects they are leading? Others will continue their work. Tae-ho nodded slowly. He wanted to say more, but he could see it would change nothing. The minds in this room were already made up. He stepped back and waited for the vote. The voting took less than an hour. Each species pressed their choice into a small device on their seat. The results appeared on a massive screen that floated above the assembly floor. In favor of banishment, 847. Against, 3. Tae-ho looked at the numbers. 847 species had voted to throw humanity out of the coalition. Only 3 had voted to let them stay. He wondered who those 3 were. Perhaps someday he would thank them. Vaughn spread his arms wide. The vote is complete. Earth is hereby banished from the Galactic Coalition. Humans have 30 standard cycles to remove themselves from coalition space. This session is ended. Cheers erupted from many sections of the assembly. Representatives embraced each other and celebrated. They acted like they had just won a great victory. Tae-ho stood alone in the center of the hall. He did not cry. He did not shout. He simply watched the celebration with quiet eyes. Then he turned and walked toward the exit. As he walked, his communication device buzzed. He looked at it and saw a message from Admiral Kim Soo-jin back on Earth. It contained only 4 words. We are ready. Proceed. Tae-ho put the device away and kept walking. The assembly had made their choice. Now humanity would make theirs. Outside the Great Hall, his shuttle waited to take him home. As he boarded, he took one last look at the massive building floating in space. He wondered if the representatives inside had any idea what they had just done. He doubted it. They thought they were protecting themselves from a dangerous young species. They thought they were making the galaxy safer. They had no idea that they had just made the worst mistake in galactic history. But they would learn. Tae-ho sat down in his shuttle and closed his eyes. The journey home would take several days. He needed to rest. There was much work to do when he arrived. The vote to banish Earth had passed. Now it was time for humanity to respond. The shuttle landed on Earth 7 days after the vote. Park Tae-ho stepped onto the ground of his home planet and breathed the fresh air. It smelled like rain and green leaves. After years of living on space stations and alien worlds, he had almost forgotten how good Earth smelled. A military vehicle waited for him at the landing pad. A young officer in a crisp uniform opened the door for him. Ambassador Park, the officer said with a salute. Admiral Kim is waiting for you at Central Command. Tae-ho nodded and climbed into the vehicle. As they drove through the city, he looked out the window at the world around him. People walked on the streets, going about their daily lives. Children played in parks. Shop owners arranged their goods. Everything looked normal and peaceful. These people had no idea what had just happened. The news of the banishment had not been made public yet. Admiral Kim wanted to speak with Tae-ho first, before any announcements were made. Central Command was a massive building in the heart of the capital city. It was where Earth's military leaders made their most important decisions. The vehicle passed through 3 security checkpoints before finally stopping at the main entrance. Inside, Tae-ho was led through long hallways, filled with busy officers. Everyone moved with purpose, but no one seemed panicked. That was a good sign. It meant Admiral Kim had things under control. The Admiral's office was on the top floor. It was a simple room with large windows that looked out over the city. Kim Soo-jin sat behind a desk, covered with screens and documents. She was a woman in her 50s with short black hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had been leading Earth's military for 15 years, and everyone respected her. When Tae-ho entered, she stood up and walked around the desk to meet him. "Tae-ho," she said, gripping his hand firmly. "I watched the vote. I am sorry you had to go through that alone." "I was not alone," Tae-ho replied. "I could feel Earth behind me, even if no one else could see it." Soo-jin smiled slightly and gestured for him to sit. "Tell me everything. Not just what was said, but what you felt. What you saw in their eyes." Tae-ho sat down and gathered his thoughts. "Fear," he said finally. "That is what I saw. They are afraid of us." Soo-jin. "Afraid of what we might become. They do not hate us. They are simply terrified." "Good," Soo-jin said. "Fear can be useful." "What do you mean?" Soo-jin leaned back in her chair. "For the past 20 years, we have been preparing for this moment. Not because we wanted it, but because we knew it might come. Humans have always been outsiders in the coalition. We joined late. We grew fast. We did not follow the same rules as everyone else." "I know all this," Tae-ho said. "Then you also know what we have done during this time. Our engineers have been working on coalition projects across the galaxy. Our doctors have been treating patients in coalition hospitals. Our scientists have been solving problems that no other species could solve." Tae-ho nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand. "We did not do this by accident," Soo-jin continued. "We made ourselves essential. Quietly. Without drawing attention. Every important system, every critical project, every breakthrough discovery in the last 30 years has human fingerprints on it. And now we are leaving," Tae-ho said. "Yes. And we are taking our knowledge with us." And the next few weeks were strange and quiet. Earth made no protests about the banishment. There were no angry speeches, no demands for justice, no threats of war. The government simply announced that Earth would comply with the coalition's decision and began organizing the withdrawal. Human workers across the galaxy received their orders. "Pack your things. Say goodbye to your colleagues. Come home." On Space Station Varus 7, Chief Engineer Yoon Ji-woo gathered her team of 12 human workers. They had spent the last 5 years building a new type of engine that could travel faster than anything the galaxy had ever seen. The project was almost complete. "We are leaving tomorrow," Ji-woo told her team. "Take all your personal belongings. Take your notes. Take everything that belongs to us." "What about the engine?" one of her engineers asked. "We are so close to finishing it." Ji-woo shook her head. "The engine stays. But our work does not. Download everything we have done. Every calculation, every design, every test result. It all comes with us." The alien scientists on the station watched the humans pack with confused expressions. They did not try to stop them. The coalition had made its decision, and humans were following orders. Everything seemed normal, but when Ji-woo's team left, they took something the aliens did not realize was missing. They took the understanding. The alien scientists had the engine, but they did not know how it worked. They had been depending on human explanations, human calculations, human solutions. Without that knowledge, the engine was just a collection of metal parts. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. In coalition hospitals, human doctors trained their replacements as best they could in the short time available. But medicine was complicated. It took years to learn what the human doctors knew. A few weeks of training was not enough. On mining worlds, human engineers shut down their equipment and walked away. They left behind machines that no one else knew how to repair. They left behind systems that no one else understood. On research stations, human scientists packed up their experiments and erased their databases. They followed all the rules. They did not destroy anything that belonged to the coalition. They simply took back what was theirs. Admiral Kim Soo-jin oversaw all of this from her office on Earth. Every day, Reports came in from across the galaxy. Humans were leaving quietly and peacefully. No incidents, no conflicts, just a calm, organized withdrawal. Some coalition officials began to feel uneasy. They had expected anger from the humans. They had expected protests, maybe even violence. This silence was strange. It was unsettling. High Minister Vaughn sent a message to Earth asking for clarification. "We notice that human workers are leaving very quickly," his message said. "Is there a problem we should know about?" The C. Sujin read the message and smiled. She wrote a simple reply. "No problem. We are simply following the coalition's decision. We will be gone within the 30 cycles as required. Thank you for your concern." Vaughn read the reply 3 times. Something about it bothered him, but he could not say what. The words were polite and correct. There was nothing wrong with them, yet he felt a cold sensation in his stomach, like something bad was coming. He pushed the feeling aside. The humans were leaving. That was what the coalition wanted. Everything was going according to plan. Back on Earth, Taeho met with Sujin again after the first month of withdrawal. "How is it going?" he asked. "Better than expected," Sujin replied. 90% of our people are already home. The rest will arrive within the next 2 weeks. And the coalition? They are starting to notice some problems. Small things, for now. A ship engine that will not start. A medical device that stopped working. A computer system that crashed and will not restart. Small things, Taeho repeated. For now. But small things become big things. Especially when no one knows how to fix them. Taeho looked out the window at the evening sky. Stars were beginning to appear. Tiny points of light scattered across the darkness. Somewhere out there, the coalition was celebrating their victory over the dangerous humans. They had no idea what was coming. "When will they understand?" Taeho asked. Sujin stood beside him and looked at the same stars. "Soon," she said. Very soon. She was right. The understanding would come. And when it did, the galaxy would never be the same. The first sign of trouble came 6 weeks after the last human left Coalition space. A passenger ship traveling between 2 major planets suddenly stopped in the middle of its journey. The engines were working, the fuel was full, but the navigation system had failed, and no one could figure out why. The ship drifted in space for 3 days before rescue vessels arrived. By then, the passengers were scared and angry. They demanded answers. How could a modern ship simply stop working? The answer came slowly, and it was not pleasant. The navigation system had been designed by humans 30 years ago. Every ship in the Coalition used some version of this system. It was reliable and efficient, and it had worked perfectly for decades. But now, without human engineers to maintain it, small problems were starting to appear. At first, Coalition technicians tried to fix the problems themselves. They were intelligent beings from advanced civilizations. How hard could it be? Very hard, it turned out. The human navigation system used mathematics that no other species fully understood. It relied on calculations that seemed impossible, on shortcuts that made no logical sense. Yet somehow, it worked. Or it had worked, until now. Within 2 months, navigation failures were happening across the galaxy. Ships got lost. Trade routes became dangerous. Travel times increased as captains chose safer but longer paths. The economy began to slow down. High Minister Vaughn called an emergency meeting of the Assembly. "This is a temporary problem," he assured everyone. "Our scientists are working to understand the human systems. We will have solutions soon." But the solutions did not come, and the problems kept growing. In the medical centers of the Coalition, doctors faced a different kind of crisis. For years, they had relied on human medical research to treat difficult diseases. Humans had a strange talent for medicine. Their short lives made them study death intensely, and they had discovered cures that longer-lived species had never imagined. Now, without new human research, some treatments began to fail. Diseases that had been controlled started spreading again. Patients who should have lived began to die. On the planet Varus, a plague broke out that killed thousands. The disease had appeared before, 20 years ago, and human doctors had stopped it quickly. This time, there were no human doctors. Local medical teams tried to use the same treatments, but they did not work as well. Something was different. Something was wrong. A young doctor named Specialist Kell worked day and night trying to save her patients. She had trained with human doctors years ago and remembered how they approached problems. They did not just follow rules. They experimented, they adapted, they tried things that seemed crazy until they worked. Kell tried to do the same, but she did not have enough knowledge. The human doctors had taken their understanding with them when they left. She was working with tools she did not fully understand. Why did they leave everything behind but teach us nothing? She asked one night, exhausted and frustrated. Her assistant, an older nurse, looked at her sadly. They tried to teach us. We did not listen. We thought we did not need them. On the mining worlds, the collapse was even faster. Human engineers had designed systems that pulled rare metals from deep underground. These metals were essential for building ships, weapons, and technology. Without them, the coalition would slowly fall apart. The systems were complicated. They required constant attention and adjustment. When the humans left, they handed over instruction manuals and training documents. But paper instructions could not replace years of experience. One by one, the mining operations began to fail. Machines broke down and could not be repaired. Tunnels collapsed because no one knew how to maintain them. Production dropped by half, then dropped again. The price of rare metals shot up across the galaxy. Factories that depended on these metals had to close. Workers lost their jobs. Economies that had been stable for centuries began to shake. Elder Koss, the stone-like representative who had spoken against humans at the vote, called for calm. "We have survived challenges before," he said in his slow, heavy voice. "We will survive this one. We simply need time to adapt." But time was running out. Every day brought new reports of failures and disasters. A power station that exploded because no one understood its safety systems. A space elevator that collapsed, killing hundreds. A food production facility that stopped working, leaving millions hungry. The coalition had spent 60 years depending on human help. They had never realized how much they needed it. Now, they were learning the hard way. 6 months after the banishment vote, High Minister Vaughn stood before the assembly again. His purple feathers had lost their shine. He looked tired and worried. "We must face the truth," he said. "The humans were more important to our society than we understood. Their departure has created problems that we cannot solve quickly. We need help." "What kind of help?" someone asked. "We need humans to come back." Silence fell over the assembly. The same representatives who had cheered the banishment now sat in shock. Go back to the humans? Ask them for help? After everything that had happened, they will never agree. Elder Koss said. "We humiliated them. We threw them out like garbage. Why would they help us now?" "Because they are humans," Vaughn replied. "They are emotional creatures. They form attachments. Many of them had friends here, colleagues they cared about. Perhaps they will help for the sake of those relationships." It was a desperate hope, and everyone knew it. But what choice did they have? Vaughn sent a message to Earth. It was carefully worded, full of diplomatic language and gentle suggestions. It did not apologize for the banishment. It did not admit that the coalition had made a mistake. It simply asked if humans might be willing to provide some technical assistance during this difficult time. The message traveled across space to Earth. Admiral Kim Soo-jin read it in her office, then read it again. Then she laughed. "They still do not understand," she said to Tae-ho, who sat across from her. "They think this is just a technical problem. A few machines that need fixing." "Will you reply?" Tae-ho asked. "Not yet. Let them wait. Let them think about what they have done." So Earth did not reply. Days passed, then weeks. The coalition sent more messages, each one slightly more desperate than the last. Still, Earth remained silent. Meanwhile, the collapse continued. More ships failed. More patients died. More factories closed. The great civilization that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years was slowly falling apart, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. On Earth, life went on normally. Humans worked in their own factories, sailed their own ships, treated their own sick. They did not need the coalition. They had never needed the coalition. They had only joined because it seemed like a good opportunity. Now that opportunity was gone, and humans were doing just fine on their own. Do you think we should help them? Tae-ho asked one evening. Soo-jin considered the question carefully. Eventually, yes. We are not cruel people. We do not want to watch them suffer forever. But first, they need to learn something important. What is that? They need to learn that they cannot treat us like servants, and then expect us to come running when they need help. They need to learn that humanity has value. Real value. Not just as workers or engineers or doctors, but as partners, as equals. Tae-ho nodded slowly. And how will they learn this? Soo-jin smiled, but there was no joy in it. The same way children learn not to touch fire. Through pain. Outside her window, the stars shone bright and cold. Somewhere out there, the coalition was burning, and humanity was watching, waiting for the right moment to offer water. That moment had not come yet. But it would. Soon, 8 months had passed since the banishment. The coalition was breaking apart. High Minister Vaughn sat alone in his private chamber, staring at reports that grew worse every day. Trade between planets had dropped by 60%. 3 major species had begun fighting over the remaining resources. 2 more were threatening to leave the coalition entirely. The great union that had kept peace in the galaxy for 2,000 years was dying, and everyone knew it. Vaughn had sent 17 messages to Earth. None of them had received a reply. At first, he thought the humans were being petty. Now, he was beginning to understand something darker. The humans were not being petty. They were being patient. They were waiting. On the planet Ceres, food riots broke out in the capital city. The food production systems had failed months ago, and supplies were running low. People fought in the streets over bags of grain. The local government declared emergency law, but it did not help. In the hospitals of Varus, Dr. Kell worked without rest. The plague had spread to 3 more cities. Her staff was exhausted. Her supplies were running out. Every day, more patients arrived. Every day, more patients died. We need the humans, she said to anyone who would listen. They know how to stop this. They stopped it before, but the humans were far away, on the other side of an invisible line they were not allowed to cross. And they were not coming back. Elder Koss made a decision that shocked the entire assembly. He announced that his species, the oldest members of the coalition, would officially apologize to humanity and beg them to return. We were wrong, Koss said in his slow, careful voice. We let fear control us. We punished the humans for being different, for being successful, for being young. This was wrong, and now we must face the consequences of our mistake. Many representatives agreed with him. Many others were still too proud to apologize. They argued that the coalition could solve its own problems. They insisted that asking humans for help would make them look weak. We are weak, Koss replied. Better to admit it now than to pretend while our civilization burns. The apology was sent to Earth. It was a long message, carefully written, full of honest words and genuine regret. It admitted that the coalition had been unfair. It acknowledged that humans had contributed more than anyone had realized. It asked, humbly and sincerely, for a second chance. Admiral Kim Soo-jin read the apology in her office. This time, she did not laugh. She read it carefully, weighing every word. This is different, she said to Tae-ho. This is real. Will you reply? Yes. But not the way they expect. Soo-jin's reply was simple. It contained only one word. No. The message hit the coalition like a physical blow. No? After all that apologizing, after all that humility, The humans had simply said no? Vaughn read the reply 100 times, looking for hidden meaning. There was none. It was just one word. One simple, devastating word. He tried again. He sent a personal message. Not as High Minister but as himself. He wrote about his own regrets, his own fears, his own hopes for the future. He wrote about his family, about his children, about the world he wanted to leave behind. He begged. Sujin read his message and felt something stir in her heart. Vaughn was not a bad person. He was a frightened leader who had made a terrible choice. Part of her wanted to help him, but another part remembered the vote. 847-3. She remembered Taeho standing alone in that great hall, surrounded by creatures who wanted to throw his entire species into the darkness. She remembered the cheers when the results were announced. No. Not yet. They had not suffered enough. She replied to Vaughn with slightly more words this time. You voted. We accepted. Vaughn stared at those words for a long time. You voted. We accepted. It was not angry. It was not threatening. It was simply a statement of fact. The coalition had made its choice. Now humanity was making theirs. He understood now. This was not about revenge. The humans were not trying to hurt the coalition. They were simply refusing to save it. There was a difference, and that difference was important. The weeks that followed were the darkest in coalition history. More systems failed. More people died. More species threatened to leave. The Great Alliance was crumbling like old stone. Finally, in desperation, Vaughn did something that no High Minister had ever done. He left his post and traveled to Earth himself. He came not as a leader, but as a beggar. He came alone, in a small ship, with no guards and no weapons. Earth's defense systems detected his ship immediately. Admiral Sujin was informed within minutes. The High Minister is approaching our space, her assistant reported. He is requesting permission to land. Sujin considered this for a long moment. Then she nodded. Let him come. Let him come. Vaughn landed at the same port where Taeho had arrived months ago. He stepped out of his ship and looked around at the human world. The air was clean and fresh. The city looked peaceful and prosperous. Everywhere he looked, he saw signs of a healthy, functioning society. The coalition was dying, but Earth was thriving. Admiral Kim Soo-jin met him at the landing pad. She was dressed in a simple uniform, no medals or decorations. She looked at him with calm, steady eyes. High Minister, she said. Welcome to Earth. Admiral Kim, Vaughn replied. His voice was tired and rough. Thank you for seeing me. You came a long way. It would be rude to turn you away. They walked together through the city. Vaughn saw children playing, workers going to their jobs, old people sitting in parks enjoying the sunshine. Everything was so normal, so peaceful. How? He asked. How are you doing so well? You lost access to coalition resources. You lost your trading partners. You should be struggling. Sujin smiled slightly. We were never as dependent on the coalition as the coalition was on us. We had our own systems, our own technology, our own ways of doing things. When we joined the coalition, we shared everything we had, but we never forgot how to survive on our own. And the coalition forgot how to survive without you. Yes. They reached a small garden in the center of the city. Sujin sat on a bench and gestured for Vaughn to join her. What do you want, High Minister? Vaughn clasped his 4 hands together. I want to save my people. I want to save the coalition. I want to undo the mistake we made. The vote cannot be undone. Then make a new vote. Come back. Help us rebuild. Name your price. Whatever you want, we will give it. Sujin looked at him for a long moment. She saw the desperation in his eyes. The fear. The exhaustion. He was not lying. He meant every word. I will think about it, she said finally. Go home. Tell your assembly to prepare for negotiation. Ambassador Park will contact you when we are ready. Hope flickered in Vaughn's eyes. You will help us? I said I will think about it. For now, that is all I can promise. Vaughn nodded and stood. He wanted to say more. but he knew he had already been given more than he deserved. "Thank you, Admiral. I will wait for your message." He returned to his ship and flew back to the Coalition. As he traveled, he thought about what he had seen on Earth. The peace, the prosperity, the quiet confidence of a species that did not need anyone else. The humans had been dangerous before. Now they were something worse. They were necessary, and they knew it. 1 year after the banishment vote, Park Tae-ho returned to the Galactic Assembly. The Great Hall looked the same as before. The silver walls still shone. The artificial stars still glittered on the ceiling. Thousands of seats still rose in circles toward the darkness above, but everything felt different. Last time, Tae-ho had stood in the center of this hall as a defendant, waiting for judgment. Today, he walked in as something else entirely. Today, he was the one with power. The representatives watched him in silence as he took his position. No one cheered this time. No one whispered insults or called for his removal. They simply watched and waited. High Minister Vaughn stood at his platform, looking down at the human ambassador. His purple feathers had grown even duller over the past months. The stress of the crisis had aged him badly. "Ambassador Park," Vaughn said, "the Coalition welcomes you back to this chamber. We are grateful that you have agreed to speak with us." "Thank you, High Minister," Tae-ho replied. His voice was calm and clear. "I am here to discuss the future. We are eager to hear your terms." Tae-ho smiled slightly. Terms. That was a diplomatic word for something much simpler. The Coalition was desperate, and everyone knew it. They would agree to almost anything if it meant humans would come back. But Tae-ho did not want to humiliate them. That was not why he was here. He wanted something more important than revenge. He wanted change. "Before I present our terms," he said, "I want to tell you a story." The representatives shifted in their seats. A story? This was unusual. When humans first made contact with the Coalition 60 years ago, Tae-ho continued, "we were amazed. So many species, so many worlds, so much knowledge and history. We thought we had found a great family to join. We thought we would finally belong to something larger than ourselves." He paused, looking around at the faces watching him. "We were wrong. We never belonged here. From the very beginning, we were treated as outsiders. We were tolerated, but not accepted. We were useful, but not valued. When we contributed, you took our contributions for granted. When we succeeded, you feared our success. And when you grew tired of us, you threw us away." Silence filled the hall. Many representatives looked down at their hands, unable to meet his eyes. "This cannot happen again," Tae-ho said. "Humanity is willing to return to the Coalition. But we will not return as servants or second-class members. We will return as equals. Full equals. With the same rights and the same power as every other species." Vaughn nodded slowly. "What exactly do you require?" Tae-ho took a deep breath. This was the moment everything changed. First, voting reform. Currently, each species has one vote, regardless of their contribution to the Coalition. This must change. Votes will be weighted based on population and contribution. Humanity represents only one species, but we contribute more than any other. Our votes should reflect that. Murmurs spread through the assembly. Some representatives looked angry, others looked resigned. Second, permanent seats. Humans will hold permanent positions on every major council and committee. We will not be observers or advisors. We will be decision-makers. Our voice will be heard in every discussion that affects the future of this Coalition. Third, full autonomy. Human worlds will govern themselves according to human laws. The Coalition will not interfere with our internal affairs. We will follow Coalition rules when dealing with other species, but within our own borders, we are free. Fourth, protection guarantees. The Coalition will formally agree to defend human worlds against any attack. And in return, humanity will help defend Coalition worlds. We will be true allies, not just members. Fifth and final, Tejo said, his voice growing stronger, an official apology. Not just words, but a document. A permanent record that acknowledges what was done to us and promises that it will never happen again. This document will be displayed in every assembly hall, on every coalition world, for all time. He stopped speaking and waited. The silence in the hall was heavy and deep. Elder Koss was the first to respond. He rose slowly from his seat, his stone-like body grinding as he moved. I accept these terms, he said. They are fair. They are just. Humanity deserves no less. Other representatives began to speak. Some agreed immediately. Others argued. A few protested that the terms were too extreme, that humanity was asking for too much. Vaughn raised his forearms for silence. Let us vote, he said. Those who accept the terms, say yes. Those who reject them, say no. The voting began. This time, the result was different. In favor, 823. Against, 27. The terms were accepted. Humanity would return to the coalition, but as equal partners, not subordinates. Tejo stood in the center of the hall and watched the numbers appear on the screen. He thought about all the humans who had worked so hard to build the coalition's technology. He thought about the doctors who had healed alien patients, the engineers who had designed ships and stations, the scientists who had solved impossible problems. All of them had been dismissed as dangerous outsiders. All of them had been thrown away. Now, the galaxy finally understood their value. Sujin had been right. The coalition needed to learn through pain. And now they had learned. After the vote, Vaughn came down from his platform to speak with Tejo personally. Ambassador, he said quietly, I know that words cannot undo what was done. But I want you to know that I am truly sorry. I let fear control my judgment. I made a terrible mistake. Tejo looked at the old bird-like alien. He saw the regret in those tired eyes. He saw the weight of guilt pressing down on those thin shoulders. We all make mistakes, Tejo said. What matters is what we do after. You came to Earth. You asked for help. You accepted our terms. That took courage. It took desperation, Vaughn admitted. Desperation and courage often look the same, Tejo replied. The important thing is that you did it. He reached out and clasped Vaughn's hand, human fingers wrapping around alien feathers. It was an awkward gesture, but it was sincere. We will work together now, Tejo said. Not as master and servant, not as old and young, but as equals. That is all we ever wanted. That is all any species wants. Vaughn nodded slowly. I understand that now. I wish I had understood it sooner. In the months that followed, humans returned to coalition space. Engineers went back to their projects. Doctors returned to their hospitals. Scientists reopened their laboratories. Slowly, carefully, the coalition began to heal. The navigation systems were repaired. The trade routes reopened. The plague was stopped. The mining operations resumed. Life returned to normal. Or something close to it. But things were different now. Humans held power that they had never held before. They sat on councils. They made decisions. They shaped the future of the galaxy. Some species resented this. They muttered that humans had grown too strong, too influential. They complained that the terms had been unfair, that humanity had taken advantage of the coalition's weakness, but most species understood the truth. Humanity had not taken anything. They had simply asked for what they deserved. And the coalition, in its desperation, had finally agreed to give it. On Earth, Admiral Kim Soo-jin retired from military service. Her work was done. She had guided humanity through the crisis and secured their place in the galaxy. Now it was time for others to lead. She spent her final years in a small house near the ocean, watching the waves and thinking about the future. Sometimes, old friends would visit. They would drink tea together and talk about the old days. Do you think we did the right thing? Someone asked her once. Making them suffer before we helped? Jin considered the question for a long time. I do not know if it was right, she finally said. But it was necessary. They would never have respected us otherwise. They needed to feel the loss before they could understand the value. That sounds harsh. The universe is harsh. But humanity has survived, and we are stronger than ever. That is what matters. Far away, in the great hall of the Galactic Assembly, a new plaque hung on the wall. It was made of simple metal, inscribed with simple words. It told the story of the banishment vote, of the collapse that followed, and of the new agreement that brought humanity back. At the bottom of the plaque was a single sentence, written in every language of the coalition. Remember, the value of a partner is known only when they are gone. Park Tae-ho visited the plaque sometimes. When he had free moments between meetings, he would stand before it and read the words, remembering everything that had happened. The vote had passed. Humanity had been banished. But in the end, humanity had won, not through war, not through revenge, simply by being essential. That was the lesson the galaxy had learned, and it was a lesson they would never forget.